By the beginning of this next clip, most of the church members have turned away or they've given up the quest for truth, but a couple of them are struggling. They're trying to follow Gabriel to the top of the mountain. The second woman that's trying to, or nearing the top of the mountain that's slightly in the distance, is the mysterious woman in black that's shown at the beginning in the opening scenes in the church. Because we should note that when the woman, I guess in white, who sings in the choir, who likes Gabriel, goes to pray, the woman in black is also there with her, and they're the last two people that are left in the church besides Gabriel. Here we see the woman in black goes back around in search of, I think, an easier pathway to try and make it up to the mountain. Now, this section of Gabriel's dream almost seems to me like he's dreaming something like that he's Moses, and he's leading the people up the mountain to the presence of God. And as it gets nearer to the top, the climb becomes too difficult, and we see that probably the last two that were determined to try and reach the top get left behind. But Gabriel, however, does make it to the top of the mountain. We see here the woman in white almost makes it to the top first. She must have been following pretty close behind Gabriel. At 2 minutes and approximately into this clip, she needs Gabriel's help to reach the very peak, and for whatever reason he doesn't help her up the last part of the way. Now, besides the fact that he's either so obsessed with his quest that he's forgotten about everything else, there could be several other good reasons for what Gabriel does. It may be that he wants her to find the truth completely on her own, and to make it completely to the top of the mountain only under her own strength. It could also be that he just thinks that eventually, if given enough time, she will just follow his lead. After being shown to us extremely briefly for probably about all of 5 seconds in part 1 of the first section of the film, here the truth is finally introduced to us. And at 4 minutes and about 40 seconds, Gabriel finally succeeds in finding her. One of the reasons I like Weber's use of or showing the truth as this beautiful naked woman is in this film is that it means that for those who can get past the offense of her nakedness, or the shockingness of her nakedness, she's very beautiful, and it allows them to show in a kind of a poetic way how Gabriel would almost, he would fall in love with her, or become so fascinated by her, that he wants to continue on his journey, and see how far the rabbit hole goes, as the expression says. Metaphorical terms, it allows you to communicate some really beautiful things. This model that Lois Weber hired to play the truth, Margaret Edwards, was really, really beautiful, and depicting that, like I said, depicting the naked truth as a beautiful woman, shows, it kind of captures some of what Jesus says about the beauty of the truth and its power to set people free, but the fact that the nudity or the nakedness of it is what causes offense to people. And I think this is a well thought of symbol here used by Lois Weber. And it also explains why Margaret Edwards is only shown in double exposure, because it helped Weber for this film to get past the censors, because it masked some of her body enough that you can't quite tell that she is completely naked. Now, having found the truth, Gabriel becomes completely obsessed by it. From an artistic point of view, only showing Miss Evans's body in double exposure is a very smart move, and it's a very creative thing to do, because it gives her figure an apparition-like and dreamlike quality, and her character does sort of exist only in Gabriel's subconscious. This is how he pictures the truth. So again, from an artistic point of view, this is a very, very creative and clever thing to do. Here, by this point in the film, we see that Gabriel's dream has now turned into a full, or grown into a full little mini story, and we see him as a monk in the Middle Ages. I think one of the reasons that people have such great opportunity for offense, or take such great offense at religious truth, and this part of the film is specifically only dealing with the religious contexts. Many of us are often deceived by relative morality, where we think in comparison to others we are more righteous. But this is a deception, and the Bible really tells us why. The hypocrites think that they're close to being without sin, yet the law says, and I think James chapter 1, that if we break even one of the commandments, we have broken the whole law, so we're guilty. But people are offended because they look at someone and say, this person is a bad sinner, because you can see what maybe appears to be a whole list of sins that are usually the ones that they being the accuser of the other, of the presumed sinner or much worse sinner, don't do. But we find with religion, purely, especially man's religion, it gives the hypocrite permission to sin in other ways that they think if they follow the rules they're allowed to transgress in certain areas, and where the absolute truth would say that this isn't so, and it's why people would hate it and be angered by it. It seems to always be that our self-righteousness causes us to think we're an exemption to God's commandments, or we find excuses for certain things of why we're allowed to sin, like people saying, it's okay to steal and kill if it's for your family, or not realizing that God's laws are universal and there are no exemptions for any of us. As we are shown in the introduction of View of the Monastery, the monks are all absorbed in their daily routine, and none of the other ones seem to have any interest in the same pursuit that Gabriel has taken up. Meanwhile, we see Gabriel has begun a sculpture, which he keeps in secrecy and doesn't allow the other monks to see. In fact, he becomes so engrossed in this process, he forgets about the other monks in the monastery. This, like the Bible, does a good job of suggesting that our quest for the truth may indeed become an all-consuming process. The curious monk, however, in this case is not deterred, and he sneaks a peek at what Gabriel has been working on, and is at once blinded by it, and blinded by maybe a glimpse of its beauty or purity or something. But at any rate, he doesn't see enough of it to be able to go back to the abbot and tell and give away Gabriel's secret. Anyway, here the film kind of suggests that the majority of people, or the majority of us, can't handle the truth, because it shows us our own ugliness. We should note here that the abbot is played by the same actor who plays the banker in Gabriel's congregation, him and the politician are probably the two biggest hypocrites in the entire congregation. So we sort of know what to expect, what his reaction might be when he sees the truth finally unveiled. Now, I don't think Weber intended this, but it is interesting to me that the abbot of the monastery is played by the same actor as plays the banker, which to me suggests that he is the high priest of the temple of greed. And note also that money is the number one idol for most people in the world. Eventually, even one of the nuns comes. I think this is portrayed by the same actress that is the the woman in the congregation that's friends with Gabriel. But at any rate, evidently she approves of his undertaking, because she brings him an offering to give to lay at the feet of the truth. Gabriel waits for a celebration to reveal the truth. Here the entire village has gathered to see what Gabriel has created. In a way, this is slightly similar to the opening scene with Gabriel preaching in the church, with all the prominent townspeople all in attendance in his congregation. We can see from this part that we're definitely still in Gabriel's subconscious as he's dreaming, because this scene with the townspeople is very, very much, it's very similar to him preaching in the church at the beginning of the film. So here he might be still almost trying to reconcile himself and his thoughts to his congregation's reaction to his message. It almost also seems to have a slight resemblance to some of the biblical feast days in the Old Testament. Considering Gabriel probably has a Doctor of Divinity degree and has a considerable seminary education, again, this would be keeping with what we should expect if it's something that he is dreaming, the contents of his dream. The next section of the film, which will be, I have to separate, I have to cut it into part 3, has some of the most serious and beautiful statements in the film, and it has some of the most beautiful artistry in the telling of the story. And as we will see in the last parts of this film, that it does a really good job of communicating some very, very abstract ideas. And Weber addresses so many important things here in detail that I won't be able to keep up with her due to time limitations. It's probably the abbot here who has called the whole town and the queen and everyone together to witness this display of Gabriel's art. So that would suggest that if this were to go wrong, let us say, it would be him who would be most humiliated first. But we find with religion, purely, especially man's religion, it gives the hypocrite permission to sin in other ways that they think if they follow the rules they're allowed to transgress in certain areas, and where the absolute truth would say that this isn't so, and it's why people would hate it and